Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the thick of it. We're exploring the battle for the American justice system. It's a place where, well, legal fights and sharp political accusations are constantly clashing. With extraordinary force, actually. We've pulled together quite a stack of articles, reports, timelines. It paints a really fascinating and pretty contentious picture.
He really does.
So our mission for you today is to sort of distill these sources, help you understand the core arguments, and especially the significant conservative concerns that are really shaping this whole national conversation right now. You'll hear about some high-stakes legal battles, serious accusations of political targeting, and also this ongoing push for accountability within federal agencies, especially from folks who feel traditional institutions have maybe strayed a bit.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here is just how quickly these narratives, these stories around justice and fairness are evolving. We're looking at such a dynamic landscape. The very perception of what counts as fair play is being challenged, like, daily.
Right.
And this idea of accountability, well, it's viewed through markedly different lenses depending on where you stand,
Definitely.
So this deep dive, it's really designed to give you a clear understanding of the key facts. And, crucially, the conservative viewpoints that are driving these important discussions. It's about getting to the heart of what's being said and why it matters so much to so many people.
Okay, so let's unpack this. And we should start with a truly headline-grabbing story. Our sources kick off by detailing that massive civil fraud lawsuit, the one brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James against Donald Trump and his businesses.
Right, that one got a lot of attention.
The accusation was pretty stark, inflating property values, his net worth, basically to secure better loans. They described the valuations as incredibly exaggerated.
That was the phrase used, yes.
And the initial judgment against Trump, his family, the company, it was an eye-popping $454 million.
It's a huge number. That's a figure that makes anyone sit up and take notice.
For sure. But then this story took a really significant turn, maybe surprising to some.
A very significant turn. A New York appeals court recently overturned that nearly $500 million judgment.
Overturned completely.
Well, all 5 judges on the panel agreed to throw out the penalty. Now, their reasons weren't all identical, but the result was clear.
Yeah.
That massive fine was gone.
Okay, so what were the different reasons?
Well, some judges flat out said the $454 million fine was excessive, even if they thought Trump was liable for some wrongdoing.
Excessive, okay.
2 others went even further. They suggested the trial court was actually wrong about the fraud itself, and that the whole case probably should be retried.
Wow, retried, that's big.
It is. And what's maybe most striking, a 5th judge believed NYAG Letitia James shouldn't have even brought the case in the first place, questioning its whole foundation.
Not just the outcome, but the whole basis for the case.
Exactly.
You can see why Eric Trump, for instance, quickly celebrated it, called it a total victory in the sham New York attorney case.
Yeah.
That makes sense in that context.
It does.
But here's a detail that our sources really highlight, and it's interesting. The banks involved, they actually testified they suffered no losses.
Right. That's crucial. And not only that, they apparently wished to continue doing business with Trump.
Yes. That's often emphasized by supporters. It really raises a fundamental question, doesn't it?
It does. Who exactly was the victim here? If the supposed victims say, no, we weren't harmed, and actually, we want to keep the relationship going.
It absolutely raises that question. It suggests to some that a core element of the case, actual harm, was missing. And despite this, pretty overwhelming appeals court decision, AG James announced she will appeal. She's taking it to the state's highest court.
Still pushing it.
Still pushing. And this move, well, some of our sources describe it as ridiculous, especially by those who saw the original case and this continued pursuit as politically motivated from the start.
It certainly keeps the story going.
No doubt. So you have the initial verdict, then this big reversal by the appeals court, and now another appeal. It really highlights this question of fairness in the whole legal process, doesn't it?
It really does.
It makes you, the listener, wonder, are these processes always impartial? Or are political motives sometimes driving these huge cases maybe more than clear evidence of actual harm?
And that exact question, that sort of underlying skepticism about impartiality, that's what our sources point to as the central theme, this narrative around the weaponization of federal agencies.
Weaponization, you hear that term a lot.
A lot. And it's not just presented as a talking point. Our sources frame it as a deeply held belief. The belief that federal agencies, DOJ, FBI, maybe even the IRS, are being, well, abused.
Abused how?
Their power being leveraged not for impartial law enforcement, but specifically for partisan political targeting, aimed at opponents, especially conservatives. It's a really profound accusation of institutional overreach.
That's a critical distinction, yeah. It's not just disagreement, it's alleging systemic abuse of power.
Precisely.
And one of the most striking examples cited in our sources, one that really fueled this narrative, was the FBI raid on former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home in Florida.
Oh, absolutely. That was huge.
It wasn't just a search warrant. It was an unprecedented action against a former president.
Indeed. The raid was reportedly about classified materials Trump allegedly took to his private residence after leaving the White House. And the reaction from Republicans,
Yeah.
immediate and fierce.
I remember.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, for example, he slammed it right away, called it another escalation in the weaponization of federal agencies against, and this was his phrase, the regime's political opponents. He even used the term banana republic tactics.
Such strong language.
Very strong. And then House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy, he issued a direct warning to Attorney General Merrick Garland, told him basically, preserve your documents and clear your calendar, signaling intense oversight was coming.
Right, if the GOP took the House.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And RNC chairwoman Romney McDaniel called the raid outrageous. She asserted Democrats continually weaponize the bureaucracy against Republicans. These weren't subtle critiques. They really highlighted a deep sense of injustice, a feeling of being targeted politically.
So this perceived weaponization, it's not just about external pressure or targeting people. Our sources also suggest there's some kind of internal counterreaction, maybe a cleanup happening inside these agencies.
That's a really fascinating angle the sources get into. For instance, one source, the Ben Ferguson podcast, highlights what it describes as significant internal shifts at the FBI, calling it a cleaning house effort.
A cleaning house?
Yeah. Now, it's important for you listening to note, this source mentions Kash Patel as leading this charge. Kash Patel is a well-known former Trump administration official, a conservative commentator. He's not the actual current FBI director. That's Christopher Wray.
Okay, got it. Important distinction.
Very. But the source frames Patel as a key voice pushing for these changes from the outside, advocating for removing several high-profile figures inside the FBI.
Like who?
The names mentioned include Brian Driscoll, who was linked to January 6 investigations, Walter Jardina, involved in some sensitive Trump-related cases, and Stephen Jensen, who critics accused of overly aggressive prosecutions of Trump allies. These actions, as framed by the podcast, are presented as a kind of corrective measure to restore what they see as fairness and accountability to agencies they believe became politicized under the Biden administration.
That's a pretty strong claim about internal reforms being pushed. But the tables are also turning, it seems, in another way. We're now seeing investigations being launched against prominent Democratic figures, which, for many conservatives, might feel like a necessary rebalancing, maybe a taste of their own medicine.
Absolutely. That's exactly how it's being framed in some quarters. The Justice Department apparently has this weaponization working group led by Ed Martin, who our sources describe as Trump's political weaponization czar, and they're initiating investigations against key figures.
Like Letitia James herself.
Yes. New York AG Letitia James is now reportedly facing a mortgage fraud investigation. This is a development many conservatives see as direct reciprocity, given her pursuit of Trump. Martin even publicly urged James to resign as an act of good faith. He showed up outside her Brooklyn townhouse, an action her lawyer quickly called a bizarre made-for-media stunt.
Wow. That happened just 4 days after the investigation began, the sources say.
That's right. Very quick, very public.
So it's not just defending against alleged weaponization. It's actively going on offense, investigating the other side. Who else is caught up in this, according to the sources?
Well, the list seems to be growing. Rep. Adam Schiff, a very prominent figure during the Trump-Russia investigation.
Of course.
He's also reportedly under a DOJ investigation now for allegedly leaking classified information back during that Russia probe. And there are also separate mortgage fraud allegations against him, though his lawyer dismisses them as totally false.
Okay, so Schiff too. Anyone else?
Well, on a broader level, there's mention of a newly declassified appendix from the Durham report. That was the big investigation into the origins of the FBI's Trump-Russia probe, remember?
Yes, I do.
This appendix allegedly points to a coordinated effort, linking George Soros's Open Society foundations, parts of the Obama-era intelligence community, and the FBI itself, all supposedly working to fuel that original Trump-Russia narrative.
That sounds exactly like the deep state accusations we hear about. A coordinated effort behind the scenes.
Precisely that narrative. And Showing perhaps even more of this rebalancing effort, House Oversight Chairman James Comer. He served civil subpoenas on Bill and Hillary Clinton.
Really? The Clintons?
Yes, and former attorneys, former FBI directors too, specifically asking for unredacted Jeffrey Epstein files.
The Epstein files.
And
Wow.
Comer didn't mince words. He apparently named Bill Clinton as his prime suspect in that particular probe.
That's quite a statement.
It reflects a very broad, very aggressive effort to investigate alleged wrongdoing across a wide spectrum of the political establishment, really focusing on figures central to the Democratic Party for decades. This whole pattern, investigations, counter-investigations, it just highlights this incredibly deep distrust in institutions now.
Yeah.
It shows just how fractured the perception of justice has become for so many Americans.
Yeah, it really does. And beyond these intense legal fights and the whole weaponization debate, our sources point to several broader conservative concerns. Policy priorities, too. Things that are really shaping the national conversation in a big way.
Yes, absolutely. These are issues that resonate very deeply. Immigration and border security, still right at the top of the list for conservatives.
Always a major focus.
A top concern. Our sources constantly highlight this perception of a porous border, the need for much stronger enforcement.
And what specific actions or policies are being talked about? Praised, maybe.
Well, for instance, Trump's administration is consistently praised in these sources for launching what they call a massive ICE hiring campaign. It reportedly drew over 100,000 applications.
100,000?
That's the figure cited, yeah. Used to show the strong public desire for more border enforcement. You also see frequent mentions of robust ICE raids, arrests of illegal migrants who have prior convictions,
Right.
and just this palpable frustration over so-called sanctuary city protections, which are seen as blocking federal law enforcement from doing its job.
Any specific examples?
One that came up in our sources was California Governor Gavin Newsom. He's faced sharp criticism for his stance on immigration. One source even quoted a post saying his wife was on the verge of tears because Trump is enforcing the law and deporting illegal alien invaders.
Wow, that's vivid. Really shows the intensity.
It does. It portrays the emotional weight and the perceived urgency of this issue for many. The conservative viewpoint here is just crystal clear. Strict enforcement of immigration laws isn't just policy, it's about national sovereignty, national security.
Got it. Border security is definitely non-negotiable from that perspective. But it's not just policy, right? Culture battles are a huge part of this narrative, too. Many feel like traditional values are under attack.
Indeed. That comes through loud and clear. The sources highlight widespread concerns about wokeness. Now, that's a broad term,
It is.
but it generally refers to progressive ideologies that are seen as undermining traditional American values, institutions, you name it. Trump himself, for example, famously pledged to clean up and remove the wokeness from American museums. For many conservatives, that's symbolic. It represents a larger fight against what they see as ideological capture of cultural institutions.
Right. Not just museums, but schools, corporations.
Exactly. And we see examples like Cracker Barrel, the restaurant chain. They reportedly face significant backlash from conservative customers over some kind of woke rebrand.
Interesting. Even affects where people eat.
It shows how deep these cultural issues run, right? It moves beyond just politics into everyday life, consumer choices, how businesses are viewed. For this audience, wokeness isn't just some trend. It's perceived as a genuine threat to the social fabric, something that needs active resistance.
Okay. And another critical area, tied very closely to the country's future, is voter integrity. We're hearing significant calls for pretty fundamental changes to election processes to ensure absolute fairness and transparency as they see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's huge. Donald Trump's push to end mail-in voting, for instance,
Oh,
it's framed as totally necessary. Why? Because, according to one source we looked at, it's a fraud. It's the only way Democrats can get elected.
that's a very strong claim.
It's a very strong claim. It suggests mail-in voting itself is inherently vulnerable to manipulation.
And do they offer specific examples?
Yes. An example often cited to back this up is a Michigan city councilman caught on video stuffing an election drop box with absentee ballots.
I remember seeing that.
Right. And that incident is presented as sort of concrete proof, validating these ongoing concerns about the security and fairness of mail-in voting and elections more broadly. For conservatives, voter integrity isn't just about stopping fraud. It's about restoring fundamental trust in the whole electoral process, making sure every legal vote counts and no illegal votes get counted.
So these big issues, border security, the culture wars, election integrity, they really reveal this powerful deeply engaged undercurrent of conservative thought, don't they?
They absolutely do.
These aren't just isolated complaints. They seem to form a pretty cohesive vision for the country's direction, advocating for significant changes in policy, institutions, even cultural norms.
We've definitely covered a lot of ground today. A really complex, often contentious landscape.
For sure. From that huge $500 million judgment against Trump being overturned
By an appeals court.
to high-profile figures like Letitia James and Adam Schiff now facing investigations themselves.
And federal agencies undergoing what some sources are calling a cleaning house.
What really stands out, I think, is this persistent narrative of institutional distrust. It feels like a battle over who holds power, who's really accountable, and whether the system itself is fundamentally fair.
Exactly. Whether you're looking at the fine print of a court case or these bigger cultural debates, the questions are always there. Who's watching the watchman? Is justice truly blind anymore? These questions feel more prominent, more urgent than ever.
Yeah.
And these discussions, they're not just political sparring, are they? They really touch on the basic principles of how we're governed, the rule of law itself. The sources we explored really highlight a profound concern among conservatives about the integrity, the impartiality of our key institutions.
Yeah, so as you, our listener, consider all these fast-moving events and the very strong viewpoints we've discussed today, maybe ask yourself this. In an era where these accusations of political weaponization are flying around and trust in our long-standing institutions seems to be genuinely eroding, how do we as a society actually ensure that justice is blind, that power is held in check?
It's the fundamental question.
It really is. What steps are you willing to take to try and understand the full picture? Especially when different sides are presenting such vastly different truths, such fundamental disagreements about how our systems even ought to work. Something to think about.